stocks, crypto, women, and dietary supplements. Now you may be thinking, what do all those things have in common? Well, one thing is, all of those things, that when you chase short-term pleasures in any of those things, they typically lead to long-term agony. And I'll tell you why. Hello, I'm Julian Hayes II, founder of Executive Health, which is a boutique concierge that helps entrepreneurs, executives, and investors be ageless, stay at the top of their game, no matter their age, optimize their entire human system, and most importantly, create generational health and wealth so they can run around their great grandchildren. And if this is your first time here, go ahead and click the like button and the subscribe button. Now, as I was talking about, with stocks and crypto and women and dietary supplements, chasing short-term pleasures typically leads to long-term agony. Now, and the reason why is, specifically, I had a conversation with a friend about crypto and stocks. He had this huge portfolio of stocks and crypto. And I asked him, okay, why'd you invest in this one? Why'd you decide to invest in this one? And I kept going down the list. And he didn't really have a good answer for most of them. He didn't even really know what a lot of the cryptos do. He didn't even really know that much about the company, their CEO, their PE ratios, what's stock going to look like in 5 to 10 years, and all those things. And that got me thinking that this is how most people approach their supplement regimen. Now, supplements is it's a multi-billion-dollar industry there. And a lot of times people just buy supplements as, just like most people, just ride a wave or try to catch and ride a wave, whether it's with their, they see an influencer on YouTube talk about getting a particular vitamin. They see a celebrity talk about getting a particular supplement, and the next thing you know, they've been doing it for months, but they have no results to show for it. And it's because they're not really looking at their own health as a systems mentality. They're not really thinking about the bio-individuality that we all have. So what I want to do is I'm going to share 5 steps, 5 simple questions that you can ask yourself when it comes to your supplement regimen. And then I'm going to do a follow-up video soon where I will break this down even further to think about specific types of protocols and bundles, or sorts you can call them, to include in your supplement regimen. So the first thing I want you to think about is, why are you taking what you are taking? What made you decide to take what you're taking? Really ask yourself this, and think about a company. Why did you decide to invest in this company as opposed to the other company? Why did you decide to invest in this particular crypto instead of another crypto? Think about that. What's the fundamental reasons behind it? And what this does is it's going to give you clarity of why you're doing something. And, obviously it's going to save you money and not waste time. It's going to save you frustration as well. But it really helps set that foundation and that clarity for why you're going to do something. For instance, why I will take vitamin D. I take vitamin D with a K2 supplement, and the reason why is because I have genetics that doesn't allow me to absorb vitamin D from the sun as well as other people. So even though I'm out here getting sun right now, I'm not absorbing it as well as other people. So therefore, if I just rely on the sun, my vitamin D levels are going to be low. And then I can validate this and test it by going to get a blood test. So for me, this is why I supplement with vitamin D and K2. And there's a whole host of other things that you can do to test this. And the next thing is, number 2 is, what are your standards when it comes to this? And what are your standards? And how are you going to measure how are you going to measure the supplement regimens? And so a lot of times we take things, but how do we know if they're going to work? So what is your standards of how you're going to go about this? Okay, so we have, number 1, why are you taking what you are taking? So that's number one. Then we talked about your standard needs. We all have different needs, and that standard needs is going to be also determined by how your diet is on a daily basis. So for instance, I eat a lot of fatty fish. I eat a lot of mackerel. I eat a lot of salmon. Anchovies a little too salty for me. And then also salmon. So I take fish oil as well, but that's for another reason that we'll get into maybe in another video. But the point being in that is, I don't necessarily need a fish oil supplement regimen, whereas somebody else does who doesn't get fatty fish in. So that's the first two things. And number three is, what are your current goals right now? A supplement regimen for someone who's just thinking about from a general health standpoint is going to be a lot different than someone who is thinking about a supplement regimen that's more performance oriented. So I would say mine is performance longevity. So I have anti-aging longevity in mind, even though I'm only 36, but that might sound young, but the best way to not get old and to fight aging is to never get old in the first place. So, but with the marathon and with my swimming, boxing, lifting as well, that's a lot of potential oxidative stress. It's a lot of potential inflammation. So my supplement regimen has that in mind more. Whereas if you're more someone who just does the baseline activity each week and you're looking for general health, then you're not going to have the same supplement regimen as me. So a lot of times it doesn't make sense to ask me what supplements that I take and that you should, because we live two different lives. And so that's why it's good to have those first two questions and then build on this. So what's your current phase in life right now when it comes to your supplement regimen and your fitness regimen? That will determine what supplements you need. And so number 4 is going to be, and how are you going to measure your supplements and measure their effectiveness? And the reason why I ask this is, a lot of times supplements are not cheap if you're getting the right ones. Now, as I said, supplements are not going to be cheap if you're getting the right ones. And that's because you should not be getting supplements where you get your toilet paper. So like Costco, Walmart, and that stuff, that's very low quality supplements. But I digress. How are you going to measure it? So if you're, for instance, I'm taking vitamin D. How do I know if the vitamin D is working? How do I know if I need 5,000 IUs or if I need 10,000 IUs? Well, obviously, this is where blood tests come in. How do I know if the berberine I'm taking, or if my exercise regimen and my low carb diet or my moderate carb diet is working, and I'm trying to improve my blood glucose A1C? These are things that you can check to make sure that your current protocol is effective, and if what you're investing is bringing back returns. It's the same way that if you are invested in a crypto, if you're invested in a stock, you keep up with the company to see if they are bringing returns or if they will bring returns down the road. So how do you measure if something's a successful investment? And there's a lot of different ways for that. And this is the same thing with your health, but with your health, an easy way to do this is with blood testing and other, maybe micronutrient testing as well. If you happen to be low in something like zinc or magnesium or any other micronutrients, you can also look into different testing for that. Okay, and our last point here is, are there any other systems that are going to be affected by what you are taking? If so, have you accounted for those systems as well? And what I mean by this is, during the pandemic, and we talked about supplements, and supplements did definitely help against the virus and that stuff. And when I did get the virus, I had a very optimized regimen that pretty much cleared things out in 48 hours. But one thing I noticed, one of those things was people were talking about vitamin D levels and how the level of your vitamin D correlated to kind of how severe the symptoms would be. And there was one thing missing in that. And I had a conversation with a doctor months ago on this, is that we forgot about K2. And this is what I talk about systems. You see, everything has a yin and yang. And, magnesium and calcium go together. Potassium and sodium go together. And vitamin D goes with K2. But it also thinks, and it's because of the calcium, because think about this. If you're just pumping and taking vitamin D, but you don't have enough K2, then how is the calcium going to get transported? And it's not. And so what happens then is the calcium hangs in the blood and it calcifies, and you start to build plaques and calcify the arteries. And so this is why it's good to slow down to speed up, but it's also good to remember that when you take one action, something else is going to be affected. Oftentimes, multiple things are going to get affected. And this is not sexy to think about. I understand that. It's not sexy to think about. But as I said at the beginning, short-term pleasures, or in this case, short-term fixes without any sight into the future, or what the future could present, or what the potential consequences, or the second, third, and fourth order effects are, they can bring long-term agony, unwanted results, or in the case of dietary supplements, wasted money, and still not any further optimized. And then sometimes you have placed yourself further from being optimized because you're creating deficiencies, self-induced deficiencies. Now, I don't want you to overthink this, but just always to think though that more and more, and just pumping one thing into the system without the other thing is not as beneficial when it comes to optimal health. So as we wrap this up here, the 5 things again is, number 1, why are you taking what you are taking? Always have a baseline principle. For instance, just like, why are you investing in the company that you're investing in? Number 2 is, what are your standard needs? We all have different standard and baseline needs, and oftentimes this is based on the type of lifestyles that we're living, the types of foods that we eat on a daily basis, and that is going to determine what kind of deficiencies and gaps that we may need to cover from supplementation. Number 3 is, what is your current goals right now? For some, it is about losing body fat and general health. For some, it is about marathon training, triathlons. For others, it is anti-aging and longevity, first and foremost. So we all have different goals, and that's going to steer you in a particular direction. Number 4 is, how are you going to measure what you are taking? Now, some things you cannot measure, but for the most part, a lot of things you can measure, whether it's through biological age testing, micronutrient testing, glycan age testing, and blood testing, of course, obviously, and just appearance, skin, gut health, those things as well. So have a way that you're going to measure things. And lastly, number 5 is keep in mind of how different systems are going to be affected by what you're taking. So don't forget, just like with the vitamin D example I shared with you, just taking a bunch of vitamin D is not going to be as beneficial without K2, because calcium has to be accounted for, and that's where the D3 and K2 come in. So stay awesome, be limitless, and go be the CEO of your health and life. Peace.